Um, awesome. Let's get into it then. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our very first and highly requested Garland webinar, Elevating Your OT Visibility with a Garland Network Tap. We're going to run through everything Network Tap, including the basics all the way to integrations and use cases. And today, after a few technical issues, I'm very lucky because I'm joined by Chris, CEO and co-founder of Garland Technology. And I'll pass over to him to introduce himself in a second. But before we do that, I'm just going to run through some basic housekeeping quickly. My name's Marcus. I'm Wavelength's channel enablement specialist, and I'll be your host for the next 35, 40 minutes or so. We will have a Q&A session at the very end. Where we'll be running through the questions we received through registration. However, if you do want to ask us a question, please feel free to pop it into the chat box on the side. And of course, as always, we know despite how much interest we got about this webinar, we understand not everyone will be able to make it due to time or prior commitments. So we'll aim to have this recording out to channel as soon as possible if any of your colleagues missed out or even if you need to rewatch. So I won't delay anymore. I'll pass over to you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. I'm sure a lot of people who have joined are curious about network tapping, but I think the key word for today is best practice, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, my name's Chris Bahari. As Marcus said, I'm the CEO, co-founder of Garland Technology, and excited to be here today. We've been, working with Wavelink for about a year now, and we're seeing a lot of growth in the Australian market. So excited today to go through some of our technologies and solutions and problems we're solving. So appreciate everybody taking the time today.
Cool, thank you so much, Chris. So, as I said, I mentioned Chris is going to run through a brief introduction of OT networks, what a tap is, and the benefits of a tap, aggregators and data diodes as well, which fall under the Garland technology branch. Of course, most importantly, some use cases and some integrations. And as I mentioned, we're going to go through a Q&A at the very end. So I'll hand the baton over to you, Chris. Take it away.
Absolutely. So, I always like to say that when you're deploying security and monitoring tools within OT environments as well as IT, you can't protect what you can't see. So, here at Garland Technology, our tagline is "See every bit, byte, and packet." And our mission in life is pretty simple. Is our goal is actually to help instrument customers' networks so they can effectively deploy security and performance monitoring solutions throughout their network. And today we're going to be focusing on OT solutions. And one of the things that we see in the OT environment, and depending on where you are within the journey of deploying security solutions within OT environments, we always look at best ways and most effective ways that we can assist in getting packet level data to your different security sensors. So as an example, if you're deploying Clarity as an example, you may start getting some visibility, within the north-south section, so level 3 or 4 of the network. But one of the things that we're working with a lot of customers on is increasing that visibility. So, how can we gain access to packet level data, down to your asset layer, so you can actually move down to east-west traffic, and maybe there's particular assets within your environment that are critical that you want to make sure that you're monitoring effectively. So today we're going to be getting into different types of technologies like network taps, aggregators, packet brokers, and data diodes. So excited to dive in with everybody. So when we look at some of the challenges, as I mentioned, if you're just getting started, you may be deploying some security sensors, utilizing span ports, off your switches, and you may be looking at different ways to connect to environments within your network that may be air gapped. A lot of these environments have uh, unmanaged switches, lower speed technologies. You find that there's a lot of flat networks, dispersed networks. So one of the things that we're talking a lot about with our customers is the just the basic challenges of, how do I actually gain access in a easy, cost-effective way, so I can actually, you know, get some visibility into, some of these very challenging environments. So, recently we did a project with some port authority where they actually wanted to monitor the cranes, and in this particular environment, they didn't have any uh, managed switches within these environments, and they were actually managed by a third party. So the only way to effectively get in there was network taps. So these are some of the things we'll be looking at today. So, could kind of continue on, challenges and things that people are looking at within the OT environments is, we mentioned the unmanaged switches, but it can be sometimes very difficult. I had a call earlier today with a customer actually. Nuclear facility. And it was interesting. One of the things they said was that the cost to run wiring within their environment. So if they have to add a wire, it can be very expensive. So even if it's just a Cat 5, and so they have areas that are air gapped and difficult to get to, difficult to manage. So we're always helping customers at looking at ways of assisting in that. There may be space constraints, or in these environments, right, you may need DIN rails, not your traditional just, 1U rack mount plates, and, DC 24-volt power. So these are all the different, challenges we're seeing. And, like anything, like a lot of environments and customers, uh, we have to look at budgets and costs. And if you were you're a manufacturing facility, maybe you weren't investing a lot of money 10 years ago, obviously, in network security, right? So we have to be conscious of this, and look at ways to really try to make it easy and simple, and also help with getting remote sites connected. And I know some industries are obviously have regulations as well. So you have to look at, how do I get access to the data? How do I do that in a secure unidirectional way? So this is where data diodes and different technologies come in place, and really try to make it easy and simple, right? We find, uh, some customers, they may not have, especially in OT, a very large security department running this. So it's important that we try to find easy, simple ways to address some of these concerns, and make it easy for our customers and partners to get after it. And if you heard me talk before, you'll definitely hear me say the truth is in the packets. We like to state that because like anything, right? Marcus and I have a conversation, and if you want to do a look back and see what happened with that conversation, if we record the entire conversation, you replay it, you'll know exactly right what happened, and during that. So when you start looking at deploying security tools, it's the same concept, right? I call my doctor, and I have a bad connection, and they only hear half the things that I'm talking about. It's going to be tough for them to you know diagnose what's wrong with me. So same thing with when you're deploying your security tools. If you're not getting this packet level data, it's difficult for the security tools to do their job. So we're going to jump into some of the tech here. So I don't know if folks have worked with network taps before, but we're just going to give a little overview here of how a network tap works. And the concept here, and Mark, if you don't mind, go to the next slide.
Yep.
Um, the concept is that we want to place a unmanaged piece of hardware. So a network tap has no IP address, no MAC address, invisible in network. And in this example, we're inserting the tap in between a router and switch. So you'll see here that the router talks to the switch in the blue line, the switch talks to the router in the red line, and the whole purpose of the tap is to, copy that traffic. So in this case, we're utilizing what's called a breakout tap, and all the traffic from the router switch gets copied out the monitoring port C, and everything from the switch to the router gets copied out D. So if it was a tap in between Marcus and I, one monitoring port would copy everything I say, and the other would copy everything Marcus says. So a couple things to keep in mind is for especially OT, we have unidirectional taps, so the monitoring ports have no way to inject data back to the live network. So not only are we guaranteeing every packet, we're guaranteeing there's no ability for the security tool to go in the reverse direction. So we're helping, isolate that, and guaranteeing every packet's going to be there. And we used to put it together a quote from Rob Joyce, who was the former CISO for the NSA, and he had a public presentation talking about network taps. And he said, one of the worst nightmares is for hackers a network tap. So, as we're talking about here on the slide, right? No IP, no MAC address. Hackers don't know it's there, and it's going to guarantee that you get every packet. So it's a great way to, look at a strategy of utilizing tap technology uh, within your strategy to deploy your security sensors. So with this tap obviously unmanaged, make it easy, simple. You go to the next slide, Marcus.
Sure.
We're so with the tapping technology, we do look at several different types, and this is fairly high level right now. But the most basic tap that we were talking about is what we call a breakout tap, because it breaks out the both sides of the conversation. So if you think about a full duplex connection, so you have a 1 gig link. If it was running at 100% utilization, you'd actually have 2 gigs of traffic. So that's the purpose of a breakout tap, is that it gives you that full uh, copy of the traffic. So you tap a 1 gig link, you can get 1 gig of each direction. But the nice thing about OT environments is a lot of times we're dealing with lower bandwidth solutions. So this is where we can use aggregation. So a simple example of combining the two directions of the conversation at a single monitoring port. And then we talk a lot about span versus tap. And the reality is it generally becomes a combination, but there can be some challenges with, uh, spanning. And, here we're talking about, you can have drop packets. You can, misconfigure your switches. You can also, have bidirectional, so it could be an access point. So, I always look at it as a journey. If you're just getting started with your security deployments, definitely, span, if you have a managed switch, is a great way to get started. And, start monitoring your network, and you may want to start, at north south. But, I always look at, understand your risk. So you want to make sure that, you understand that if you are utilizing span mirror ports, that you put some process in place. So you know if you're doing a firmware update on your switches or your routers, do you have a format that you're actually going to go in, verify that your span ports are configured properly. And also understand that if there's an adversary and there's a compromise on your network, uh, you know people know that people use spam ports, right, for monitoring. So there's definitely some risk there. So you know by looking at network taps as a permanent placement, guaranteed every packet, it's really good to you know, figure out where your tolerance for risk is, where you're at with the journey of deploying your security solutions. And you may find that you budget for some tapping solutions, throughout the year, and you start with the most critical assets. And, that's an area where you may want to start with network taps immediately.
Chris, I think another really good thing about taps compared to span that I've noticed, and a lot of feedback that we've had through Disty is that taps, on the other hand, don't take up an extra port on the switch alongside not dropping any packets, which can be quite beneficial to a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's when you look at it, you're taking your production network and then you're saying, you know what, I want to monitor and for security or even for performance purposes, you essentially tell your switch to copy the traffic over your production network or your production switch, and then let me monitor it to check for why my performance is bad, or use it for security tools. And when span was initially coming out, it was really meant to be more of a troubleshooting uh, technique. And obviously it's turned into a lot of folks using it for permanent monitoring. But again, we always just like to get into the risk factors, and you think about the vulnerabilities that switches have, and constantly updating them. And so it's just one of those things that you know beware of what you're utilizing, and the risks that you have with it. So you know, here's just giving a little example. We can go to the next slide, Marcus. We've
Sure.
been
We've
diving
got it
into
there.
the tap versus span,
Benefits.
and so
Yes.
so when you get into tapping, so one of the things as you start deploying network taps, with a span port, generally you will have maybe one span port per switch. So when you start looking at locations that you want to monitor and utilizing taps with, um, depending on the type of tap that we reviewed earlier, you're going to get two monitoring ports per tap. So when you start looking at doing deployments, this is where aggregation can be a great way to combine network taps with aggregators and/or packet brokers. So one of the things that we're showing here is that as you're looking to deploy and monitor multiple segments within your environment, um, your sensors are generally going to be limited. So if you're deploying a clarity IDS sensor, or you're deploying a Fortinet NDR sensor, you're going to have so many input ports available on your sensors. So this is where, right, we start taking a combination of traffic coming off of taps, and we can do this with span as well. So you can bring in traffic coming in from span ports and/or a combination of network taps. We can bring this into an aggregator that will combine all the traffic to one or multiple security and monitoring tools. And you can also utilize a packet broker and start doing some additional functions as well, in terms of having the capability to do some load balancing, or maybe there's certain traffic you don't want to monitor. You have the ability to do some filtering as well. So this is just really simplifies your deployment, so you have a permanent copy of your traffic on your network to send to any security and monitoring tools. And as you continue to grow, we always like to say that we do a tap to tool architecture. So uh, you know with your tools, you may have security and monitoring tools that maybe are 1 gig sensors, or 10 gig, or 25 gig. And by instrumenting your network with network taps and packet brokers and aggregators, what we allow you to do is really simplify it. So you may find that you have an environment that maybe you went from 1 gig to 10 gig as an example, and you may only be running half a gig utilization. So same thing. A lot of people upgrade to 10 gig switches. In IT, obviously, higher speeds than OT, going to 40, 100. But a lot of times they're not running at that speed. So by putting in network taps and packet brokers, it allows us to bring in traffic from 1 gig all the way up to 100 gig. But depending on the utilization or what traffic you want to see, you can do some filtering, and we could bring in traffic and send it out a 1 gig port, 10 gig, 25 gig. So it gives you that full flexibility uh, to easily monitor your network, um, regardless of what speed you're running on your network. And with network performance, so we talk a lot about security. But the nice thing is once you start building out an out-of-band network for security monitoring, you can also utilize this for performance. So this is a simple example of where we're taking traffic in from some network taps, bringing it into a packet broker, and having the ability to not only send that traffic to your security tools but also to performance monitoring tools. So now you can look at methodologies of sharing budgets as well. So the infrastructure you put in, maybe initially the project is a security network detection response solution, but uh, we can also look at utilizing this with network performance monitoring tools as well. And the nice thing is once the traffic gets sent into the packet brokers, depending on the different models, we can do things like deduplication, packet slicing, time stamping, um, which time stamping that could be a little more applicable with performance monitoring, or some companies will do some packet capture. And some banks and financial companies, an example, they may only want to store for packet capture maybe the first 128 bytes of the packet, depending on some regulation. So this really gives you the ability to not just utilize this technology, the taps and packet brokers that you put in for your security solutions, but be able to share with your uh, networking teams to help them analyze the performance of the network as well.
Chris, we've got a use case next. An unmanaged switch is present, removing the option of using the span port to connect one OT sensor. What's the best way to connect the sensor?
Yeah, so with this, we've run into this a lot in OT. So this happens to be a use case for transport. And at Wayside, they wanted to be able to at all the stations do some monitoring. And uh, one of the challenges was that all their infrastructure is very old, right? So unmanaged switches. So even if they wanted to span, right, they didn't have that capability, and they didn't have um, the timing or budgets to replace all the switches. And there was another caveat here with this particular opportunity is some of that equipment was actually managed by a third party. So here we had a customer that had a mandate to secure these environments and monitor them, but you know really no way to do that. So by inserting a network tap at these locations, it allowed us to tap in between the switch and the HMIs and be able to get a copy of that traffic to the security sensor. Another neat thing for this is they actually didn't know if in these environments if they were going to be AC power available or if they would have to use DC 24 volt. So one of the nice things with our portable tap technologies, our portable data diodes, those can be either rack mounted or DIN mounted, but you can also have, with the locking mechanism on the back, you can have an AC power supply or a DC 24 volt connected. So it gave a lot of flexibility to the customer to have both. So when they went out for deployments, they just had both power supplies with them, and were able to do the implementation faster. So as we mentioned with you know network taps, span ports. These are all methodologies of getting traffic to uh, getting traffic off the network. So again, span ports, wire taps. You may also bring traffic in via encapsulation. So some people use ER span or GRE or VXLAN. So right, you have all this traffic that you want to monitor or send a packet capture security monitoring tools. So this is where the packet broker comes into play. So I always like to say this is a it's like a traffic cop, right? So this gives you the ability to easily uh, bring that traffic in and be able to send it to one or multiple tools. So um, when you're looking at OT, one of the strategies we always like to look at is how can we help centralize uh, the sensors, and a lot of these networks can be dispersed. So we'll do tap aggregation, span aggregation. So let's say as an example, you have uh, let's say you have your main distribution frame, so where your security sensors are sitting, and you may have you know 15 to 20 remote closets or IDFs. So what's nice is, in these IDFs, maybe you need, a couple taps to get the traffic you need to monitor, or, maybe you have, 5 to 8 spam ports per, each IDF remote closet. We can do aggregation, and then we can home run that back to the main distribution frame where your security sensors are sitting. So now we bring all the traffic in, we centralize it, and we can now load balance it to your security tools to even provide more resiliency. So again, as a little recap here, right? We have the data sources, we bring that in the packet broker. If you haven't worked with packet brokers, this can include features of if there's traffic you don't want to see, you can filter it out. We can also handle decapsulating traffic. So uh, we're working on a project where customers using ER span at about 1,500 remote sites, and they're bringing that into our central packet broker. We'll actually decapsulate that and then send the traffic to um, to your security or monitoring tools. So it's really a great way to centralize things. And one of the things I like to bring up as well is not only do we want to try to simplify deployments, but we try to make it easy as well. So with our packet brokers, we don't do things like subscription licensing or port fees. So if you have a packet broker that has, deduplication or, time stamping, packet slicing, this is all included. You don't, get hit with extra fees. So you'll find that, with some of our competitors, uh, they're going to charge you to turn on ports every year to use them. They're going to charge you every year to use dedupe. They're going to charge every year to do encapsulation, decapsulation. So, we have a traditional, licensing model where you buy the hardware, every feature function works on the box, and you just pay for standard warranty. So if we come out with a new feature function, no problem, as long as you're under warranty, that will be included in the next firmware release.
Chris, we've got another use case here. Connecting one OT sensor with a single input port to 8 span links. And there's concern about packet injection, which is a common concern that we get through our disti channels as well. What's the best way to connect the sensor?
Yeah, so two things. One is, we mentioned in the beginning that, one of the you know challenges and risks with using a spam port is that it can be bidirectional. So it could be a potential access point. So when dealing with some Australian SACI regulations, um, with certain utilities and stuff, they have to uh, have a essentially a data diode physical point where if you take in span to a sensor, you have to put a piece of hardware in between to make sure that there's no physical way to send traffic back to the live network. So, we do have data diode solutions, but We've also combined, which is uh, really effective for customers, is the ability to bring in span traffic and be able to aggregate that to your security sensor, but also having the data diode functionality built in. So what we're showing here, Marcus, is 8 span ports are coming in, being aggregated. Then we're sending that to your security sensor, and you'll see that little red X there. There's no uh, way for traffic to go from the monitoring port back to um, back to the span port traffic. So it isolates that. So uh, if your security sensor maybe only has one input port on it, so now you actually can take 8 spans and send it to one sensor versus having uh, 8 sensors, uh, one per span port. So it's a great way to simplify your deployment, secure your deployment, and take away some of that risk of using the span ports.
I think we'll go through one more use case as well, since they paint a picture of how these aggregators actually really benefit. Connecting one OT sensor with a single input port to 9 span links this time.
Yeah, so this is moving up in speeds here. So uh, so the first solution was showing 1 gig. This is a 1 gig, 10 gig solution. Um, so what's nice about this is uh, we can bring in 1 gig or 10 gig, and we can also do speed and media conversion here. So your sensor could be 1 gig or 10 gig. And with the packet broker technology as well, we could also do some filtering if required. There's certain traffic you didn't want to see. Um, so what's nice is we have a very broad packet broker line. So we actually have packet brokers that are 4 ports, 10 ports, 20 ports, up to very high density 2U 6400 gig ports. So it gives our customers a lot of flexibility.
Cool. I think let's go to data diodes.
Absolutely. Uh, so one of the things that in critical in infrastructure environments is ensuring unidirectional traffic to your security sensors. So one of the things that we're seeing with a lot of regulations, not only in Australia but NIS2 and NERC and is that when you're dealing with environments like a substation as an example, you have to ensure that you got unidirectional traffic going into your sensors. So very standard application that we see is with span and mirror ports, where you want to bring traffic in to the data diode, pass it through, and then not have any way to go in the reverse direction. So as we show on the next slide here, um, the diagram here just showing showing this as a graphical representation. So you bring in a span port into the A port on the data diode, you pass it out the C port. We have no physical way to go in the reverse direction. So we actually created this product about 10 years ago. One of a large oil company had a requirement for deploying sensors. They realized their span ports were bidirectional. So when we initially developed this product, it was actually based on a customer need, and we didn't call it a data diode back then. But fast forward about 10 years later, this has become a very popular product. Unmanaged, we can support 10 meg, 100 meg, 1 gig copper, 100 base FX and LX, 10 gig, and within some government agencies as well. We actually have a 100 gigabit data diode as well, which we generally don't see in the OT environments, but we do handle all the different speeds and media types for these types of products.
Another use case for us, connecting one OT sensor with a single import to one span link, and there's concern about packet injection.
Yep. So, as we were talking about, this is a very common use case. So we find that, a lot of different environments, like substations, utilities, nuclear plants, areas that want to deploy monitoring solutions using spam ports, they need to provide that isolation. So, in this example, it's showing, bringing in a spam port, copying out to your sensor. And what's nice as well is, as I mentioned, with our smaller taps, same with these, we can DIN mount them, so you can have a DIN rail on them. You can also put AC power as well as DC 24 volt. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility. Or if you do have a traditional 19-inch rack, you can also rack mount these as well, depending on your environment and how you're looking to deploy.
We've got a Purdue model here, and as we were just mentioning oil and gas before, Chris, we've got an OT environment use case here.
Yeah, so this is for us, oil gas is definitely an area that we've been seeing a lot of success in, and we find that a lot of customers are very diligent about wanting to see all the traffic and be able to monitor all their critical assets. So in this case, we are doing, some very large, tap to packet broker solutions. So we'll have, facilities that are, deploying, 50, 100, 200 wire taps, and we're taking the outputs of those taps into a packet broker to consolidate them and be able to send to their security and monitoring tools. So we're seeing more and more, environments that, they want to take the risk out. They want to guarantee that they're going to be able to monitor every single uh, packet in their critical environment. And so they've made the commitment, to deploy, wiretaps with packet brokers.
And Chris, I hear you say a lot that we tap to tool, and I know that
Yep,
Garland integrates with so many different other vendors. Can you give us, and the audience, I guess, a little bit of insight on how Garland actually integrates with so many network security and OT vendors?
absolutely. So, I mentioned that in the beginning, Marcus, we were talking about the truth is in the packets, right? So, we're very focused, and when we look at, when you look at Garland, our tagline, see every bit byte in packet. And, I always like to say that we do a tap to tool architecture. So what we truly do is when we're, working with a customer partner, we look at, what security monitoring tools they're looking to deploy within their network. We look at, you know, where do you want to start? What's the most critical part of your network? Where you want to get visibility? And, we design solutions, to the security tool you're deploying. So, if you're deploying, Clarity as an example is shown on the screen here, uh, we're actually going to, take the approach to figure out the best way to get what Clarity needs to do its job. So the nice thing with our technology is we're pretty independent, meaning that any security tool can actually take traffic from our taps or packet brokers or data diodes. So, uh, but what we've seen is within the OT industry, I my estimate would be that most customers are maybe only seeing 10 to 15% of their network. So one of the big challenges for a lot of the security vendors in this space is how do I help my customers, as I mentioned in the Purdue model earlier, how do I get down to the east west and the asset layer, and how do I do that in a simple, cost-effective way that's I'm going to be able to also manage. So that's really where we come into play is, really managing, working with our partners, working with our customers, to put a design together that's going to really, effectively get more traffic to the sensor so they can do their job. Because again, if you look at any of these technologies, you look at uh, any of their marketing, they always talk about visibility. You can't see, we started with that, right? You can't protect what you can't see. So it's the same concept with all these vendors. Um, and so, think of us as the infrastructure, and our whole job is to instrument that your network and try, you know, best way possible to centralize that traffic so they can do their job effectively.
Cool. I think we are hitting the Q&A given light of the time.
Yep,
So we're going to blitz through some of the questions, really good questions as well, that we actually got um, through our registration. Um, and Chris, please jump in and provide
yep,
insight um, wherever you see fit, because we got some really good questions. The first one that came through um, was, where is the best place to put a tap network? And I guess for us, the three places that we say through distribution would be critical links. Obviously, placing a tap on a critical network link where you need that full visibility, such as between core switches, between routers or firewalls, is going to ensure that you're capturing all the traffic for monitoring and analysis. Of course, high utilization areas, deploying taps in areas with high traffic volume to monitor performance and detect issues. But also, I think as well with security monitoring, you know, jump in if you agree
yep.
or have something to
Yeah,
add to this, Chris.
yeah. No, everything you're saying is spot on, and you look at everybody's network's a little different, right? So, um, one of the things we always recommend is we like to understand what the flow of the traffic is, and if there's any choke points within the network that you can really get a lot from putting a tap in, and so we do look at it strategically, and trying to figure out as well, depending on the security tool, or if you're also deploying performance monitoring tools, putting the placement in uh, of the traffic that your security or monitoring tool wants to see as well. So all those strategies are really good ones, Marcus. And so for us, it's understanding their network, how the network traffic flows, and then optimizing where you can place them. And as I mentioned, talking to a nuclear customer earlier today, and they one of the biggest challenges is they a lot of areas that are segregated, and which is very challenging. So again, it's working with the customers to figure out those best locations, and then remember, this is a journey. I always say this with especially OT. Uh, start planning, and you're not going to do this in a month implementation. So uh, put a plan together, and work through that plan, and continue to gain visibility throughout your network.
I guess following on from that, the next question that we got through registration is, I don't currently have a tap solution in place with my network. How do I know where to get started? I think that really comes off the back of planning the deployment, and that obviously includes assessing your needs. So are we focusing on security monitoring? Are we focusing on performance analysis or troubleshooting and determining those critical points in your network where visibility is essential between core switches, routers, network perimeter is going to be really crucial, I guess.
Absolutely. And again, if fairly broad question about where do I start with a tap? One of my first questions would be uh, what's your security or monitoring solution, right? And then from there, that helps dictate where to tap, and uh, where to go after. So it's you know I always say too, if it's security, if you're first time getting started, put one inside your firewall, outside your firewall is a great place to get started to get that visibility going and start at that north-south uh, location.
Yeah. Um, the last question that we got through registration, which is quite a loaded question. It's a two-parter, but very important given that part of our conversation was about best practice and compliancy. How does a tap in a network assist with SOC compliance in Australia? This is a great question, um, because I
Absolutely.
think sometimes I think when we talk about OT specifically, compliancy and best practice is probably the biggest subheading under this conversation. I think, when we talk about um, SOC compliancy, cyber incident reporting. SOCI mandates that reporting of cyber incidents, and TAPs are really going to allow for continuous monitoring of network traffic, making it a lot easier to detect and report incidences, especially with things like risk management programs. SOCI also requires all entities to have a risk management program to identify and mitigate any risks. And with TAPS providing such detailed traffic data, that's going to help to identify vulnerabilities and assess risk more accurately. And, to kind of encompass all of it, enhance cybersecurity obligations, for assets deemed as system of national significance. SOCI is going to impose additional obligations like vulnerability assessment and cybersecurity exercises, and a TAP's really going to facilitate these activities by providing that necessary data for thorough
Right.
analysis and testing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, some other, challenges that it can just help solve is, right, people need to do this now. So, uh, you know, some people may be looking at it and maybe they want to use spanner mirror ports, but they have unmanaged switches, as I mentioned. Don't wait. We can put a tap in today and get that traffic. Uh, and, you know, it's a hands-off approach. You put it in, it's permanent. You have it 24 by 7, 365. You're getting the data. I like the word, continuous monitoring, as you said, right? This gives that ability. It's guaranteed. Um, you know, happens at the time. Maybe more in IT, but I need to troubleshoot something. I'm going to take that spam port, right, and hook up my Wireshark, do a little troubleshooting, and then plug it back into the security tool. And mistakes can happen in that process, right? So yeah, it's giving that that ability. The taps as well have the unidirectional data diode functionality. So you're also isolating the security sensor from your network. So isolation, guaranteed every packet. Uh, Permanent placement allows you to do it today and now. Like, Wiretap doesn't care what your switches are, managed, unmanaged, how your network's designed. It can go between two network devices. And if a part of your network's managed by, ABB, Honeywell, or someone as well, no worries. The wiretap can get inserted. You don't touch the equipment. It just copies all the traffic right from the wire. So it really is a great way to do it, and um, you know, get you know, help you meet multiple points of the regulations.
Yeah. And the second part of this question, which I think is really interesting because now we're crossing over into two industry verticals. How does a network tap work alongside an NDR or a SecOps solution? Which is, um, it might sound like a loaded question, but I think when you kind of go really into it, it's quite systematic. A network tap is going to capture all that network traffic by, creating a copy of the data and passing it through the network, making sure that none of that data is missed. But the NDR tool is going to use that data to monitor and analyze that network traffic in real time, detect anomalies and potential threats through behavioral analytics or machine learning, especially when we've got SecOps AI that's really prevalent now. From that, analyzing that data from that tap, that NDR solution is going to be able to identify suspicious activity, and the SecOps team is going to be able to use the insights from the NDR tool, which is utilizing the data from the tap to prioritize and respond to threats a lot more easily. So faster detection, response times to incidences, and of course, I think most importantly, reducing potential impact on the network.
Yeah, no, absolutely. NDRs, we deploy a lot of NDR solutions, with our partners and customers, and same concept is right. The NDR needs that packet level data, so we make it easy, simple to get connected, and guarantee the traffic's going to be sent to your NDR so it can do its job effectively. And so for us, again, it's guaranteeing that access point.
Yeah, and NDR solutions often integrate with SOAR platforms as well. So then from that, we can then further automate actions such as blocking IP addresses or isolating compromised devices. It's quite expensive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions that we got through registration, but really great questions. We've hit time, so thank you so much, Chris, for joining us on this webinar. This was a great insight into network taps, aggregators, data diodes, and a great little Q&A. Once again, guys, if you do have any more questions, feel free to send them through to either our enablement team, our pre-sales team, our marketing team. We're more than happy to answer them. But yeah, farewell, have a great afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks everybody for joining.